Yes, 2-5 is here. Sports Reports is ordered. We got some business to tend to right quick. So, every year, the College Football Playoff Committee comes out with their initial rankings, and then we get into these arguments about who's most deserving, who's the best. And we always forget that best is subjective. It just depends on what you value, what you're looking for. So what you may look for in a team may not match what I look for in a team. So when we're looking at the teams that are sitting around right now, around the top 5, top 7, we're doing a lot of reputation. We're doing a lot of living in the past to get to an end that's 4 months away. So if you don't have Georgia number 1 right now, so what? It's going to even out. It's going to play out. And why would you have Georgia number 1? Outside of the fact that they won the last 2 national titles, but Stetson Bennett is gone. Ringo is gone. This is not the same team. Why would you have Michigan number 1? I didn't even consider them number 1 for this practice that we're about to do. Because when you look at their schedule, who was I supposed to be impressed with them beating? Right? So for all intents and purposes, Michigan's eliminated from this conversation. Penn State, I didn't count them just yet. The West Virginia win is starting to look better. But they don't have that signature win yet. And it's early in the season. That's the best part of this. It's so early that this is going to change. And it's okay for it to change. Now, if you pick Georgia number 1 at the beginning of this, and you don't want to change it just because you just didn't want to change it, or you didn't want to say you were wrong, or you didn't want to think that you were wrong, you're doing it wrong. So let's examine this. Florida State, the 2 best wins in the country so far. LSU, opening night, Labor Day weekend, Clemson this past weekend. And I know Clemson is not Clemson, but they had a big ACC home winning streak, that FSU snapped. And nobody cares when this is a SEC team. Nobody cares when you beat A&M or you beat Tennessee and they're not that good. You just say, oh, it's the SEC, and you just roll with it. So I'm going to give Florida State the credit, but the problem with Florida State is they have that wart that happened up in Chestnut Hill. So it's hard to really consider them the best, even though they may have the best resume. All right. Georgia, their wins, UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, and UAB. Haven't even played a road game yet. You can't be my number 1 if you haven't played on the road. It's just that simple. They go on the road this weekend down to Jordan-Hare. They should win. We'll see. They are number 6 in point differential right now in this season, so you got to consider that. Florida State is 8th in points per game, but only 16th in point differential. Brings us to Washington, who has probably looked the most impressive than anybody. So if you're going off of the eye test, if you're going off of game control, if you're going off of the fact that they averaged 9.8 yards a play in the first half, they averaged 321 yards in the first half, then that should matter. But who did they beat? They beat Boise, who we thought was going to be a tough game at the beginning of the season. They beat Tulsa in their 3rd-string quarterback. They beat Sparty, who is in the middle of firing a coach right now. And they beat the Cal Golden Bears, who were tied at halftime with the Idaho Vandals earlier this season. But Washington is 3rd in points per game, behind Oregon and USC in the country, 3rd in point differential. They're beating people about 50-17. So domination matters. Ohio State, They may have a better win than Florida State does. Now, the problem is that Florida State has 2 of those victories, but Ohio State has the best win at South Bend. And all this is going to change. It's the best win for right now, but it's going to change as the season goes on. And you have the ability, I have the ability to move the rankings around as we need to. But Ohio State hasn't necessarily played with their food. They didn't look good against Indiana, starting out at a quarterback for the first time. Kyle McCord. He grew up at Notre Dame this weekend. Their other wins are Youngstown State and my beloved Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. USC, second in point differential, first in points per game. Their wins, San Jose State, Nevada, who may be the worst team in Division 1A or FBS, if you will, Stanford, and then whatever was left of Arizona State this past weekend that they struggled to put away. That was a tight game getting into the middle of the third quarter. Now, USC has Caleb Williams. So if we want to project and say that USC is a playoff team or they should be a top 5 team, top 3, whatever you want to put them at, that's just fine. And then, like I said, Michigan's schedule disqualified them. That brings us to Texas, who won at Bama. So I know everybody's going to say they won at Bama, but out the same side of their mouth, they're going to say, this isn't Bama. They beat Rice. They won at Baylor this past weekend, 38-6. But last week, the week prior, they were tied 10-10 in the third quarter with Wyoming. Now, granted, Wyoming beat Texas Tech and Appalachian State. So maybe we got something there. But for the time being, it is what it is. So that was a lot of offense, right? Let's look at defense. So defensive yards per game. Ohio State is 5th. Georgia is 14th. Texas 19th. Then you drop USC at 57. Washington at 61. Florida State at 79. Then you got points per game given up. Ohio State, number 3. Georgia, number 10. Washington, number 24. USC, 36. FSU, 46. So if I was ranking simply going off of the eye test, I would go in order: Washington, Texas, USC, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia. That's what I would do if I was doing the eye test. If I was going off of resume, I would go Florida State, Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Washington, USC. But as is, combining all of the data that I just gave you, all of the data, I'm going with Washington number 1, Ohio State number 2, Texas number 3, Florida State number 4, Georgia number 5, USC number 6. And then I might put Penn State at number 7 and then leave Michigan at 8. Scream at me in the comments. Let me know what you think. Peace.